Ibon, welcome to 10-Minute Talks. I'm Harshadeva. Today, we will reflect on peace building, environmental challenges, and superpower diplomacy. Let me introduce my guest. I'm truly delighted to have with me a very special guest, Erik Solheim, a globally respected leader in environment and development and an experienced peace negotiator who has worked across countries like Sri Lanka, Nepal, Sudan, and Myanmar. He served as Norway's Minister of Environment and International Development, where he helped shape global efforts on rainforest conservation and sustainable development, and later as the Executive Director of United Nations Environment, bringing strong global attention to climate action and sustainability. Over the years, Erik has played a key role in some of the world's most complex peace processes, including leading the Sri Lanka peace efforts while also working at the highest levels of international diplomacy and development cooperation. Today, he continues to influence global thinking as president of the Europe-Asia Center, as an advisor to governments, institutions, and environmental initiatives around the world. Thank you very much, Erik. Thank you very much for joining me today. My first question is, you have worked both as a peace negotiator and as a global environmental leader. In your experience, how are environmental challenges and conflict increasingly connected today?
There is a very strong link between environment destruction and climate change and wars. But of course, all wars are caused by human beings, and a war is started by a president or a general or a guerrilla leader or a terrorist. It's started by human beings, but it's maybe much more easy to go to war if there is a lot of environment destruction or harm to Mother Earth. A very clear example, I think, is the Sahel belt in Africa. In Darfur, in Sudan, for example, people who are running, they're pastoralists, they're running with their sheep. If weather becomes drier and hotter, they will tend to go into the areas where there are permanent farmers, because they need to find grazing opportunities for their sheep. Well, they're not welcomed by the farmers because they are running their farmland, and then you easily have a conflict. And in fact, the current civil war in Sudan started as a conflict between herders, pastoralists, and permanent farmers in Darfur, and then it escalated into this all-out war, which we now see all over Sudan. So, if we want to keep peace, let's treat Mother Earth better. Let's avoid climate change, because climate change and environment destruction will amplify wars, even if the war are caused by humans.
Thank you, Erik. My second question is, if I may take you back to Sri Lanka for a moment. Looking back at your role in the peace process, can you share one moment that shaped your understanding of peace building, and what lesson from that still feel relevant today?
I think what stuck with me is at the end the many conversation I had with Mr. Prabhakaran, the leader of the Tamil Tigers, because the Tamil Tigers, which had made a rebellion to improve the life of the Tamils in Sri Lanka against the Sinhala-dominated government. It was not a democratic institution. It was not a general meeting. It was one man making all decisions. So at the end of the day, unless we could convince Prabhakaran to go for peace, there would be no peace in Sri Lanka. And I had many more conversations with him than any other foreigner have ever had. And the issue was always, how can we find a way to peace in Sri Lanka, which is favorable to the Tamil community, the Tamil nation, as Prabhakaran would have seen it, but also to himself. How could he play a role in the politics after a settlement? And that issue, how to find a solution to conflict which can work for the people, but also for the leaders, is at the end of the day at the core of every conflict. If you want to make peace in Ukraine, well, it must be favorable for the Ukrainian and the Russian people, but it may also help Mr. Putin, otherwise he will never go to peace. He must survive that peace, he maybe become stronger out of it. And if you want to stop the war in Iran, President Trump has now cornered himself, he has painted himself into a corner, you don't really know how to get out of that corner. Well, a solution must be favorable both to the American people, to people all over the world, but unless President Trump can declare a victory of some sort, is not likely to accept peace. So the relationship between the broader issues of war and peace and the benefits, or not so much benefits, for the top leaders are the core issue of any conflict.
Thank you. Erik, thank you very much. My last question is, today we're seeing rising conflict, political polarization, and environmental crisis. From your experience, when conflict intensifies, what's matter most in reaching real compromises? Is it formal diplomacy, personal relationships between leaders, or pressure from the international actors?
All these matters, but if you want to find peace, unfortunately, peace will always have to be between the people who command the armed forces. I mean, in Sri Lanka, lots of people told me you should work with this or that NGO who did brilliant work somewhere in Sri Lanka. And indeed, they did fantastic work creating peace at the local level. But at the end of the day, they didn't command any guerrilla soldiers or any armed forces. The peace could only be between the Tamil targets led by Mr. Prabhakaran and whoever at any point was the president or prime minister of Sri Lanka, because they commanded the armed forces. Exactly the same, unfortunately, is now the case in say the Iran war. Every single person outside Iran basically want peace. We all want peace. I mean, all Sri Lankans want to be able to drive their cars 24 hours, 365 days without any stop due to oil shortage. People in India want to use their fertilizer to make agriculture better. And you can go all around the world. We all want peace. And of course, the people of Iran want peace more than everyone else. But unless you find a settlement which is acceptable to both the Iranian political leaders, so they can survive and their state formation can prosper from this, and at the same time, which is acceptable to President Trump, sorry to say, there will be no peace, because the average citizen in India, Sri Lanka, China, Africa, or Europe have very little impact upon the top leaders. I mean, Trump, for example, may struggle to get votes in America if you see many more people desert from the Republican Party into the Democratic Party. That will hurt him, and that will be pressure on him. But the pressure coming from the rest of the world is much more limited. So if you want peace, please focus on the main peace actors, the people who cause wars. And then I think personal diplomacy is key. It cannot be just formalities. You need to speak to the top leaders. Trump is running the United States now as a kingdom, as a personal aristocracy with his family. It's not a normally political system like, say, China or India or France or Germany. If you want to reach out to Trump, well, you need to wine and dine with the people who influence Trump, not with everyone else. So personal diplomacy, finding people who can really crack the nut with the top leaders is important. This is not easy, but whenever you have peacemakers, and there are peacemakers in all conflicts, they should always look into how can they get close to the leaders. Do they need to speak about the wives or the children, or about football or soccer or cricket, or about nature, or about food, or about music? What are the areas of interest, so that you can get close to the leader and find ways through that into looking for the solution, because the solution must always be beneficial to the leaders as well as to the people and the broader global community. This is not impossible. The most important relationship in the world today is, of course, that between China and the United States. It's now decided that President Trump will go to China in May. that's very hopeful, because only a conflict between China and the US can really be a world conflict. Ukraine is very, very bad for the people in Ukraine, but it's not a global conflict. Sudan is killing tens of thousands of people in Sudan, but again, it's not affecting people all over the world. So we need to stop these wars, but only a confrontation between China and the United States has the possibility of going global. So that is the most important of everything. That must be avoided. We must not go back to the Cold War, where there was constant confrontation between the two largest nations. And I'm quite hopeful that we can avoid that, because there is no ideological difference now between China and the US. There are different great power interests, but not difficult ideology. They are very, very closely intertwined in economic terms. The United States tried to be independent of China. Well, everything will be a lot more costly for the people in the United States, because China is producing so much more efficiently, and that will cause a lot of difficulties for the leaders of the United States to try to decouple from China. So I'm somewhat hopeful that this core relationship will remain. There is a historical treaty which I think we should celebrate, which is basically not known by anyone, at least outside China. That's the so-called Chanyuan Treaty. That was from the year 2005. What's important was that these were the two largest and most powerful nations in the world. China was so dominant at that time. The two largest nations in the world were two Chinese nations, the Song and Liao. They made a peace treaty which lasted for 100 years. In those 100 years, yes, they didn't love each other. They had some issues, but they never went to war. And that's what we should aim for between the United States and China, this long-lasting peace. And then, of course, it matters what India, Europe, Indonesia, Turkey, Nigeria, Brazil, what all other powers do. But all those other powers really want peace. In today's world, there are two epicenters of wars and conflicts. One is Washington, the other is Moscow. All other major powers really want peace, and of course, the people of the world is desperate for peace.
Thank you, Erik. Thank you very much for this wonderful conversation. Thank you very much. Have a good one.
Thank you. Thank you.